Today we're going to talk about everyone's favourite character, Nina. Get the hell out of here! Yeah, no, the majority of the fandom heavily dislikes this character, mainly because she tends to be selfish, screwing everyone around her and constantly crying and telling us she's scared because she is also cowardly. It's clear that Miura wrote her in a way that is purposely dislikable. She's not meant to be liked. And in terms of the themes and messages that are prevalent in the Conviction arc, Nina is a good character in that regard, highlighting the darker side of weakness. By no means is this video going to be me telling you all, actually she is a likable character. I don't believe that. But because I like to exercise my thoughts and be annoying, I will dedicate a section in this video to a defense of her character. When making these videos, to make sure I am not talking out of my behind, I always reread the sections of the book where the character of discussion appears. And with Nina, there's a lot I forgot about when reading it again. This is because the Conviction arc has a lot of stuff going on. There's Mosgus, the Holy Iron Chain Knights, demons, and the return of Griffith. As a consequence of that, Nina isn't the center of attention. So when she does show up in all this chaos, it's usually her doing something dumb that keeps us sour on her. So I think a lot of you, like me, would do good with a refresher of Nina's story, because unless you are reading Berserk every single day, you will have forgotten about a fair few details about her and her story. When we first encounter Nina, she is living in Albion, a ruined city under the Holy See's jurisdiction. This is, of course, where the main focus of the birthing ceremony takes place, with Father Mosgus and the rebirth of Griffith into the physical world. Nina is part of an escort group where the eldest of them is Luca, who divides the pearls from a necklace she got given among the rest of the group. They are obviously poor, and Luca is the maternal figure among these unfortunates, serving as a guiding light for them in the dire life they live. Nina is given medicine, which we later learn is because of her disease she has, and she is tasked with looking after Casca. The cracks of Nina's character are seen very early on when she sees some of the people throwing rocks at the alleged heretic, and she notices and then joins in on the action. Straight away, this shows us that she can easily fall into peer pressure. Whatever people are doing around her, she will feel obligated to follow it. It's not a question of whether it's right or wrong to do so, it's just what she does, and what we see later is proof of that. While at the stream, we see she is bleeding down below and that it's mixed with pus. It's definitely one of those dirty diseases she no doubt got from her work and other activities she takes part in. She is fearful that she will lose her mind eventually. She can't stop thinking about how grave and terrible her life is. Back to the campsite, she comes across a man named Joachim. Funnily enough, Joachim is mentioned as the father of the Virgin Mary, the grandfather of Jesus Christ in Christian tradition. Miura doesn't hold back on the religious stuff in this arc. Nina and Joachim are very familiar with each other. Their relationship appears rocky. Joachim voices his concerns for Nina, which she sees as an attempt to get a freebie from her. But she tells him if he's brave enough, he should meet her at the riverside at midnight. Joachim is sweet on Nina as he does make it to the riverside. Nina appears and Joachim is asked if he would die with her, and he says he would. I think Joachim doesn't understand how serious Nina is when she asks this question, as she starts taking him to a location he isn't familiar with, and the two arrive at the bowels of the holy ground. This is possibly the dirtiest party you could imagine, as that type of behaviour is present. There's a band playing music, and past the fire is a sea of women climbing on an individual with a goat's head. In the greater scope of the theme of religion in this arc, this is where sin takes place. Joachim finds this chilling, whereas Nina is like, let's go! And the degeneracy only gets worse as women swarm around Joachim, and Nina is clearly enjoying her time. The man is shocked with how Nina is so chill with what's happening. The scene somehow becomes stranger as this weird spirit surrounds Nina and Joachim, and his hand actually goes through the girl's body. He thinks it has to be an illusion. Above the bonfire, we see a form start to take place, and it's none other than the sadomasochist, Slan. Of course, the seductive one of the god's hand, and considering the scenario, it makes sense she is involved in this wild affair. Luca, who manages to locate Nina, is a fair distance away from this ritual, but still can see what's going on. According to her, they have mixed drugs into the cook pot, and that's why you get this extreme situation. The people seem possessed, and I think it's the most adult imagery we have ever seen in Berserk. It's ridiculously detailed and very gross. I don't think you guys give me enough credit for going through and analysing this disgusting stuff. It's certainly not my favourite thing in the world. Anyways, Nina and Joachim go over to the Great Goat. Nina's reason for bringing him here is to hopefully convert him and join this pagan cult. Under the influence of drugs, Joachim follows the instructions given by Nina to join the cult. He has to kiss his heart, and then he has to kiss his member. But he does. Hey, that's not really funny. The final task to convert Yochim is to eat this stew, and he begins doing so until his brain finally fights through the drugs. Something is off about the stew, so he turns to the cook pot and realizes what he just ate was human remains. But I guess Kentaro didn't think the scene was fucked up enough, so he was like, let's show a baby getting cooked so it just makes it that little bit extra worse. Rightfully so, Yochim freaks out and starts running away. Nina is disappointed, but goes a step forward to insist to those around her that Yochim has betrayed these people and means to kill them. Fuck you, little girl. They cast Yochim down the cliff. Falling, he sees Nina's face, which has a tear in it. Considering the height of that fall, the cult assumes that Yochim is dead. Nina first laughs, but then cries. This shows that she is battling with herself. Like before with throwing rocks at the assumed heretic, she felt pressured to do what the crowd was doing. Again with this cult, this behavior is multiplied. She thinks she is being loyal to the cult and that is the right thing to do. But you can see that her actions obviously do not sit right within her heart. It is somewhat sad to see, but considering what she has done to Yochim, all I can think in this scene is, you silly, stupid girl. And Luca echoes my feelings in the next part when she pops her head around, and Nina turns straight to defensive mode. She looks up to Luca and she thinks Luca will be disappointed in her for her behavior. Nina even throws a rock at poor Luca and threatens to jump off. Luca feels pity for the girl, as perhaps she can see herself in her, or at the very least, empathize with what she is feeling. When Luca finally reaches the crazed girl, Nina threatens to call for the heretics to return and kill Luca. This statement results in an ass whooping. She is the mother figure of the group after all, so this is very appropriate. She keeps slapping Nina till she tears up. Luca then hugs Nina, saying she is a stupid girl. Hey, that's what I said. Nina attempts to explain the situation with Yochim, but Luca says it's not the time for that. On their way back to the camp, they find Casca surrounded by the heretics. One of them tears the bandages from Casca's face, expecting to see a deformed picture, but of course it's just Casca's face. Unlike every other single time in the story when a discussing individual is near Casca, these losers attempt to rape her.
Fuck.
I forgot about this moment, but it just shows how often Casca is in this predicament. Casca screams out and demonic spirits manifest and possess some of the heretics, and they begin taking each other out. This makes Luca suspect Casca is a witch. The remaining heretics also share this opinion, and they bow to her, seeing her as their sorceress. Now remember, this was the time when the Holy See and the fanatic Mosgus was tasked with exterminating heretics in Albion. So when Luca takes Casca back to the camp, Nina is especially frightened, as she has taken part in the pagan cult's activities and caused the death of Yochim. She thinks Casca will make it easier for her to be caught by the Holy See, so to help the situation, she comes up with a brilliant idea. She says to Luca that they should think about ditching Casca. Luca is like, really? You're gonna still be acting like this? Do you need another lesson? Luca of course rejects this idea as it ain't the right thing to do. Nina is not so sure. When Guts turns up to the scene, Luca comes to him and says she knows the branded woman. Nina is chilling with Casca inside the tent, and a wave of panic flows through Nina, who suspects that Luca has been arrested and that the hunters will come for her next. She decides she must run away and she wants to take Casca with her, thinking that Luca will be okay with her. After all, she isn't ditching Casca. But since Guts is now thrown into the equation, it is now different. And here is where I think a lot of the hate for Nina truly starts. Before we didn't particularly like her, we know she is crazy and so she's a problem, but when our main character arrives, our boy Guts, who is on a mission to find Casca, arrives to where she is and Nina decides to take Casca away from the camp, it snatches away that hope for Gus to see his love. It is all Nina's fault here, and so it just makes us grit our teeth. She is really pushing our patience. But it's only made worse when Nina crosses paths with the heretics again, and this time they have come for their sorceress. On the slightly bright side, Yochim is here. He's okay. That's good. He is ordered by the Holy See to lead them to the location of the Heretics' Cave. Meanwhile, Isidro and Puck are hiding outside the Heretics' Cave, where Casca has been crowned. Nina is brought out, and she is exposed. She's been given a new task that will expiate her from the crime of trying to take away Casca for herself. This task would be the removal of her heart as an offering to the alleged witch, Casca. When this is done, Casca will then mingle with the Great Goat. Well, of course. It's Casca, what else would happen? Nina is about to be cut open when Isidro tells Puck to inform Guts of the situation. He then throws a rock at the heretic to intercept, and he is successful. With the heretics now distracted, Nina, using her 2 brain cells for once, rushes to Casca, hoping to escape with her, but Casca's brand has begun to bleed. An alarming noise alerts the heretics Nina and Isidro to the cookpot in the center of the cave, which is now exuding a thick black smoke which takes shape of many human-like faces. Through the help of Joachim, the Holy See are now outside the caves, but a bunch of heretics emerge and they appear ravenous. A battle between heretics and the Holy See erupts. As it is happening, one of the animalistic heretics is approaching the two defenseless girls, which Isidro sees and saves the two girls. Man, Isidro was at his best in the conviction arc, wasn't he? The Great Goat transforms and kills many of the Holy See Knights and comes across Casca once again and... yep, he tries to do that. What the fuck? Just like the Wild section, Guts comes to the rescue and chops off his member and Casca is saved. That is very similar to the Wild scenario. Too similar. You can't keep getting away with it! Man, I wish the essay section of my critique on Berserk didn't have to get removed. After Guts defeats the Great Goat, he, along with Isidro, Nina and Casca, go to the cliffside to try and escape. But Sir Pico is waiting for them. Nina notices something on the cliff face nearby. A small metal hoop has been attached to the rock face, and a length of rope descends to the bottom of the chasm. Isidro then lures Nina and is successful. At the same time, Joachim is alerted to something and goes through the darkness, and he sees Nina and has a very reasonable reaction, and runs back to the Holy See shouting that he has found heretics. There is nothing wrong with this. I am sorry, Nina. As this is happening, Casca wriggles out of the rope that was luring her down, and both girls are captured by the Holy See. They are then subsequently thrown into a dark, dingy cell in the Tower of Conviction. Nina is terrified by what is happening. She looks up at Casca and asks her to use her witchcraft to allow them to escape, but she receives no response. Frustrated, she shoves Casca to the floor and blames her for all the bad that is happening. She then regrets her words and apologizes. When will you learn? My god, you just can't help yourself, can you? It's like an individual who is addicted to things that have a negative impact on them. They are aware of it, but they just can't seem to stop themselves. You can't get out of your own way. A couple of Moscus's torturers enter the room and grab Casca to be taken away. Nina is frightened and considers whether or not to call out to the torturers and ask to be taken in Casca's place. However, her decision is made for her. The imp is disgusted that Nina has not yet begged to be taken in Casca's place. Now, if one of these despicable beings is also commenting about how bad of a person you are, then you know you're fucked up, and that should probably prompt you to be introspective. The torturers decide that Nina should be taken away first because of this. Casca is alone in the cell. Because of her actions, Nina finds herself disgusting. Okay, cool that you recognize that. Does that mean you're gonna change?
No.
The torturers begin questioning her as they walk. This makes Nina once again consider telling the torturers that Casca is the witch, thinking that if she admits the truth, she may delay, if not avoid her own execution. Nina decides not to say anything, being courageous for Luca's sake. What courage she does have is immediately lost when she enters the torture room. She sees bodies hanging from the ceiling. Nina nearly faints. She is dragged past all the torture devices, seeing what the torturers do to the women who are deemed to be enemies of God. Understanding it could be her fate, Nina mentally pleads for Luca to save her. On her way back to the cell, she is distraught. All courage is gone as she disclosed all information to the torturers before they could even begin torturing her. When Moscus's plan to put Casca inside the Iron Maiden fails, demonic spirits start flooding the Tower of Conviction. Meanwhile, Nina lies alone in her cell, beating herself for her cowardice and selfishness. I think we realize by now that this is a common pattern of behavior she exhibits. She is unsure whether she should focus on saving Casca or saving herself, but just then she hears a knock on her cell door, and she is fearful for what's outside. But when the door opens, she sees that it is the wonderful Luca. Her, along with Jerome and Isidro, have come to save her, but they are looking for another to save, Casca. Luca turns to Nina and asks of Casca's whereabouts. Nina has an idea of where Casca is at, and that place is scary to Nina. She cannot bring herself to answer. Jerome answers for her, guessing that Casca is in the underground torture chamber. However, as they move down the dark hallway, they hear a faint noise from the darkness ahead of them. As they watch in horror and confusion, several giant faces slowly make their way toward them. They instead prioritize escaping. Moscus, using his new power, sets the demonic spirits away, claiming he has been given a gift. By the way, if you want more about Moscus, check out my video on him. Carnage occurs. Damage has been dealt to the building. The lack of support on the floor means it collapses under Luca's feet, though Jerome and Nina can save her before she goes tumbling outside the side of the tall tower. Nina is the only one with a strong grip on Luca, preventing her from falling. She realizes that she is the only thing now standing between Luca and certain death. She starts understanding the power she wields in this moment. You could assume that Nina briefly thinks about letting go of Luca. Surprisingly, the choice is made for her by Luca, who willingly releases her grip on Nina's hand and falls from the massive height, but Skull Knight saves her. The battle continues, Nina is scared and a violent earthquake erupts, making the tower collapse. Nina is out of the picture for a little while, but when we pick up with her again, she along with Farnese, Supika and Jerome emerge from the rubble and climb down the collapsed tower. Mosgus and Guts have their final battle. Jerome is amazed at the might of the Black Swordsman. Isidro decides to take advantage of the fact that Mosgus is distracted, telling his allies Jerome, Nina, Casca and Puck that they must focus on finishing the twin disciples. Nina is yet again contemplating everything and cowers away. She decides to run away but stops dead in her tracks just a few feet away when she sees Farnese and Sir Pico, and the consequence of her cowardice arrives when she finds herself trapped between the two Mosgus torturers. And whether it is a stroke of good luck or quick thinking, she falls off the tower, avoiding her death from the fanatical torturers. She lands in the merchant shack, surviving the fall. When Mosgus perishes at the hand of Guts, down on the ground the refugees are trapped. The spirits surround them on three sides, and the wall of Albion blocks their way backwards. Azan and the Holy Iron Chain Knights also surround the refugees, defending them from those possessed by spirits. Nina sits up from the place she landed. Rubbing her ankle, she fears it may be broken. She struggles to walk and falls to the ground, screaming out in pain. She looks up and sees a large number of people charging in the direction of where she is, and they almost trample her till Luca manages to save Nina. Nina cries and hugs her old mentor, but Luca tells her that there is no time to get caught up in a reunion. Nina cannot run due to her injured ankle, so Luca comes up with a plan. She helps Nina over to a nearby barrel and orders her to climb inside it. While at first Nina refuses to leave Luca's side, the older woman knocks the younger on the head with the barrel's lid, telling her to wake the hell up. She tells Nina straight to her face that she is a coward, but Luca says to Nina that she can use it to her advantage at this moment, saying that because of her stubbornness, she just might survive. She gives the girl one last wink before placing the lid on the barrel. Guts and others fight off the weird monster blob things. Meanwhile, Nina is still inside the barrel. Despite being protected inside this barrel, she is still fearful. She suddenly coughs into her hands. She notices the small drops of blood on her palms. She remembers Luca's words about the fearful having a strong desire to live. Nina calms herself down to curl up into a ball, willfully being uncomfortable and scared if it means that she'll survive, using her weakness as a strength. In the next chapters, everything becomes a rubble and the Antichrist arrives into the physical world once more. When it becomes quiet, Nina exits the barrel. She clearly is on an adrenaline high as she starts laughing, knowing that she survived the crazy affair. After crawling out of her hiding place, she begs the two men to search for Luca, who Nina fears died in the commotion of the night. Fearing that she'll never see her mentor again, Nina begins to break down and cry, but Luca is fine and Nina is relieved, and we get a nice little scene where they hug each other. In the last chapter of this arc, Luca is spitting some wisdom and Nina realizes that Luca is the strong one. She's always had time to look after other people, and Nina for the first time is positively introspective. She is sickened by her disgrace and foolishness in the events that had just transpired. Seeing Luca as a positive influence, she decides to stay by Luca. However, as Nina approaches the river, she hears a voice calling for her name near the water. She is shocked to see Joachim walking toward her. He voices his intention to apologize to her for leaving her in the cave. He explains that he feared being killed had he stayed with her, and calls himself a coward. He apologizes and turns to leave, but Nina calls him back. Now that Joachim has admitted to feeling cowardly, Nina feels that she is able to identify with him. In this moment, Nina decides not to return to the group. She has decided to leave with Joachim, knowing that if she stayed with Luca, she would come to hate her mentor once more. She wants to be with someone who has the same weakness and flaws as herself, someone who can feel her pain and help her live, and she's found that person in Joachim. Luca is aware that Nina is not returning and accepts the girl's decision, a step finally in the right direction, and with that, the tale of Nina is finished, as that is the last we see of her. Firstly, I feel like I need to be real with you all. The way I make a video is very simple. I have an idea and I simply execute it. Wow, groundbreaking stuff, right? But before I start making a video about the character or topic of discussion, I generally already have thoughts and feelings before I start to write the script and begin rereading. In the case of Nina, before going into this video, I was more charitable towards her despite knowing her shortcomings. But after rereading the section she's involved in, my opinion has been updated because I think I lean more towards the crowd that dislike her. Though I will have a defense for her in this video because I like to be annoying and both sides it. Overall, I find there's more reason to dislike her, so let's discuss that. If I had to describe Nina in one word, it would be infuriating, because I personally think she is not cold-hearted. Her actions just kind of contradict that. She has a pattern that is basically like, I'm frightened, I do a self-interested action because of that, I end up hurting people around me, I feel disgusted because of that behaviour, and repeat. When it comes to Nina, she feels bad about what she's doing. But it doesn't matter what your intentions are, it's what you do that defines you. And this is why we view Nina as a self-centered individual, because what she does, whether that be a consequence of her cowardice or not, are actions that are ultimately selfish. A lot of times when she feels pressure, she tends to throw others under the bus before herself, and when she gets called out on her behaviour, she becomes defensive and violent. This is evident in the scene when Luca finds her after driving Yoichim off the cliff. It's the fact that she has the capacity to be better, and many times she's presented with an opportunity to change, but it seems it's difficult for her to do that. It's only till the very end does she start to walk in the direction of being better. And because of how long it takes for her just to get one foot in the right direction, we're left with a feeling of, oh, okay, that's good I guess. It would be very generous to call this a redemption. Like I mentioned earlier, Nina is easily swayed into following the crowd. When she feels the eyes of the people in Albion glaring at her for not joining in on throwing rocks at the heretics, she feels the need to join in. And of course, she got coerced into joining that dark and dirty cult. This cult is terrible, it's drugged up, spreading disease and is cannibalistic, and has no prejudice in that, for we see a baby being prepared for the cook pot. Nina is a part of that cult. She seems loyal to it as she wants to bring her love interest, Yoichim, there and convert him. And when he fails the instructions that are given to him, Nina does her most immoral act by shouting out to the heretics that Yoichim means to betray them, saying to kill him for not meeting the cult's requirements. This chases Yoichim off a cliff that he is lucky to have survived. At the very least, this was attempted murder, which I think we can all confidently say was an awful thing that Nina tried to do. I think everything else she does is somewhat defensible, but this is one thing that she does where I don't think there is a strong defense for. Another reason why we're inclined to dislike Nina is that she often shares her scenes with the much more likeable Luca, who, as far as I'm aware of, is unanimously loved. She is in the same living situation as Nina, but they are widely different from one another. Everything you need to know about Luca's character is shown in her first scene, where she breaks off the pearl necklace and divides it among the younger girls. She is the mother figure and is very forgiving of Nina. So just simply because Luca is this great person and Nina is, Nina, the contrast between the two is stark, and so it's easier to have disfavour for the young girl when she steps out of line. Something that kept annoying me with Nina was her tendency to keep beating herself up after she kept doing the same selfish actions over and over. At first, you may feel something for her battling herself, but it does no good at all if you keep calling yourself disgusting for acting selfishly. Okay, recognise that and do better. You're not doing anything for yourself if you cry about how badly you've acted, and you do nothing to improve upon that. The fact that she is scared is understandable. I won't fault her for being fearful of what is happening, because I feel like we would all be terrified of the events in the conviction arc if we were present. To me, Miura wrote Nina to show us the consequence of cowardice. How humans' instinct to survive puts us in this inward-looking state of mind, where it can put others in jeopardy. You yourself can harm others. Nina thinks about ditching Casca, pushes her to the ground, blaming her for everything bad that is happening. She nearly causes her own death because of her pusillanimity. It kind of reminds me of that one guy from Saving Private Ryan who is so scared he doesn't save his other comrade when he has the chance to do so. However, in the end he ends up redeeming himself more than Nina does. Alright, I was finishing my script up and I decided to take one last look around the internet to see if there was anything I missed about Nina. And one Reddit post pointed out the same comparison between the Saving Private Ryan guy and Nina. I swear I thought of this comparison myself before seeing this. Well, I don't feel as special anymore. I thought I was smart. I will say that Nina is fascinating in the regard that she is written to be pathetic on purpose. So pathetic, in fact, that one of Moscos's torturers comments on how pitiful she is. If that doesn't make someone consider their life choices, then I don't know what will. Though Nina leaves the story with us having a better opinion of her, having realised her own faults and makes a move to change, it isn't a significant improvement. It's only the beginning of the redemption. And I would have liked a more impactful moment here personally. She may not have deserved it in some people's eyes. I just think we're left with this feeling of, okay, bye crazy girl. Overall, I'm just left indifferent about how Nina's story ends. Oh boy, here we go. So I urge everyone to try and be as empathetic as possible here, because that's what I had to do to defend her. And I think I've got some decent points for why we should at least be a little more soft on Nina. Okay. Being as charitable as possible, Nina is what the average person is likely to be if they lived in the same circumstances as her in the world of Berserk. She represents the weak among the strong. We would all like to believe that we would be like Guts, Supiko, or even a Sidro. But the truth is, I think we are more likely to be Nina than any of them. First of all, her parents died due to plague. She lives in a poverty-stricken area, with her only means of surviving is to sell herself. And keep in mind she is not an adult, people. Her age is undisclosed, but the general assumption is that she's somewhere between 14 to 17 years old. Some of you may argue that being a teenager is basically being an adult in the world of Berserk. And all I'll say is that in our history, people also held this view. But as time went on, and we've used our brains, we've realised that you're only an adult till you're 18. And while we can criticise Nina for whatever she may do in the story, just like Rosine, we have to acknowledge that she is not an adult. And her experience and environment pushed her in the direction of who she is. There are man-eating demons out there, and you've got messed up humans strolling around like stone-faced Mosgus. Yes, she's not great, but in comparison, she really ain't that bad, honestly. It's easy to judge her when I'm sitting in my comfy chair in front of a computer. I'm in a privileged position in contrast to an individual like Nina. And so with that said, we really shouldn't be surprised that Nina, a teenager with a turbulent life, is attracted to a cult. People like Nina struggle to see that they are down the road of self-destruction, because they've learned that this behaviour is just the norm. Also, this arc is used for Miura to comment on religion and faith and what it does to different people. God is very prevalent in the heads of people in Albion. You can tell Nina feels crushed under the weight of it. Between her poor living space and her disease that will eventually end her life, she feels terrified as God is present. Yet everything is terrible and gloomy. Like the medieval period, people often thought if misfortune was happening to them, it was likely God punishing them in some way. It's the fact that there is this omniscient being, and yet the situation is so extremely dire that it makes a character like Nina feel powerless and ultimately scared. I think we can sympathise with that. And this constant fear she holds throughout the majority of her time in the story has led many people to believe that perhaps she has an anxiety disorder of some kind. While it wouldn't be a shocker if she did, it's not really specified. She is, though, riddled with anxiety practically all the time. Luca is what Nina wishes she were, confident, independent, and loving to those around her. But because Nina is not like that, it threatens Nina's self-esteem. When she feels like she has some power over Luca when she is dangling from the tower, that sense of power is snatched away when Luca decides for herself to let go of Nina. The egg of the perfect world adds to this. Those threatened by the dark can by no means ever let go of a torch. All they can do is stare in blank surprise at their illuminated, disgustingly cruel selves and continue to suffer it. And to protect their stunted self-esteem, they depend on it, all the while hating it. Nina comes to learn this, and it's why she chooses to leave Luca at the end, because she feels like it will be inevitable for her admiration towards Luca to once again turn into envy. We do have to acknowledge that in the end, she willingly chose to be a better person, despite the number of lessons it took and what she had to suffer to see it. At the end of the day, she decides to walk her own path with an individual that she can identify with. Unlike some characters, she doesn't give in to the temptation of evil. She has the strength and courage to be better. If she doesn't succeed in that endeavour, at least she tried. A lot of people in the Berserk community loathe Nina, and some even consider her to be up there with some of the worst in Berserk. And here's my reaction to that thought.
Are you serious?
Okay, you can dislike her all you want, but you're not going to tell me she is the worst when there are people like this around, right? Like, come on, you can't be serious. I think a reason why people have an adverse reaction to Nina is that there is something in her that we can see in ourselves. The weakness we can all inhabit. The times we've been more selfish than we're proud of. Our envy of others that have put us in a negative and spiteful headspace. We hate that about human nature, and Nina showcases these qualities. And perhaps the relatability we feel makes us feel uncomfortable, because it's hard to accept that we can be disgusting and just like Nina. Nina is not a hero by any means, and we should really acknowledge that we have different standards for different people. We should absolutely hold Guts to a higher standard than her. She is a minor character. She isn't special and adds less to the narrative than a person like Guts or Casca. One of the themes of this whole arc is about how weak-willed people cling to those stronger than themselves for hope and guidance. Nina, of course, is one of these weak-willed people, and she looks to Luca as being the one she can cling to. Farnese at first looks to Mozgus as being the person she can cling to for guidance, but at the end of the arc, Guts is someone she gambles on following in hopes of finding her purpose. But Nina actually manages to stand on her own 2 feet and chooses not to depend on someone stronger than her. Instead, she decides to cling to someone similar to her so that they can both grow together and become better. The reason she is trying to be better is commendable, and I think we can forgive a lot of what she's done if she continues down this path of doing better. Last thing I will say is that, though it is easy to give in to our negative side, and perhaps our surroundings feel like they push us into it, we should do our utmost to avoid becoming weak, and we should all strive to be more like Luca.